Okay, so we're back to chapter 3 and 3.3. I looked up the double equal sign, and basically what the double equal sign is it's when we're trying to check equality. So if I'm trying to look at A and B and to see if they're equal, and we'll see some other things down in another chapter or two as far as when to use that and when to use something else. Whenever we use a single equal sign is when we're trying to um, actually take one variable and make it equal to another. So I can actually say A equal B, and that goes ahead and says now what was in B is now in A, so I'm making one equal to the other. Double equal is again more for checking. Is this one equal to that one? Okay, so kind of getting back to this, we've got a new class called the loan qualifier. We have a method called void main, and we're getting some information from our J option pane, which basically would display a dialog box. And so we've got a couple of, so I got three variables, two doubles and a string. We're getting the enter your annual salary, enter number of years on the current job, and if salary is greater than or equal to 30. We've got another if statement inside of that. So this is now what's called a nested if. Now in order to get from this if to that if, this if has to be true. So this has to be true in order for us to even get to this if statement. So for example, I work for an insurance company, and so we may in our program have if age is less than 26, then we're going to check number of accidents. But if you're greater than 26, we're going to do something else. Excuse me. So in this case, we're checking to see if years on the job is greater than or equal to 2. As long as it's greater than 30, then we're going to check for 30,000. We're going to check to see for the years on the job. Now, if this one is true and this one is false, then we're going to drop into this if statement. Now, the one thing I want you to notice is how this if statement is aligned with this else, and this if is aligned with that else. We like to do that to keep it readable. One thing that I always like to stress to my students is a great programmer is someone who makes it easy for the next person to come behind them to maintain this code. If they can pick it up fairly quickly, then that's a great program. So the faster someone can read that program, understand what's going on, and make modifications to get it back out there, that's a great written program. So you notice I've got my indentations, everything looks nice. So in this case, we're checking to see if the salary is greater than or equal to 30. If it isn't, it automatically goes to the next else statement. It doesn't even do these items inside the if. Notice we have our beginning and ending braces. We have to do that in these cases. So if it's greater than 2, then we go ahead and display another option pane. You qualify for the loan. If this one's true and this one's false, we come to this one. It says you must have been on your current job for at least 2 years to qualify. If you make less than 30,000, we say sorry, you must earn at least 30,000 to qualify for this loan. So let's run it. And in our annual salary, I'm going to go ahead and type in 28,000. I click OK, and it comes up and says enter number of years at your current job. I'm going to go ahead and say 3. It says you must earn at least 30,000 per year to qualify. Click OK. So well, that doesn't make sense, does it? I typed in 28,000. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this wrong. Yeah, that second question was here. I thought it was basically down here. Okay, I see that now. Okay, so first statement, false. Automatically came down here and says you must earn at least that to qualify. So if I run it again, this one's up in 35, and okay, and I want to put 1 year. and it comes up and says you must be on the current job for at least 2 years. Let's try that again. So this time I'm going to type in 35. This time I'm going to type in 3, and it comes up and says you qualify for the loan. So nested ifs. I might need to check one if statement to get to the next. There's no need to even check that next one if this first one's not true. Okay. One of the things that they had a nice big program started on 126 called Nested Decisions. And if we take a look at this, name of the class is Nested Decisions. We have our void main method. We've got a couple of variables. We've got an integer test score and a string input. We're using a J option pane, enter your numeric test score, and I will tell you the grade. So we're checking to see if the test score is less than 60, your grade is F. If your test score is less than 70, your grade is D. If the test score is less than 80. Okay, so if you really take a look at this one, so you notice we're kind of starting backwards. We're basically saying if your test score is less than 60, your grade is F, so on and so forth. Now, we could have, so here's basically how it's working, is if you've got a 90, this one's going to be false, so it's going to automatically jump down to the else statement. Notice we've got an if inside of the else. We're checking to see if the score is less than 70. If that statement is false, it's going to keep going on. So it's going to keep coming down here until we basically get to an A. So in this case, this will work just fine, but I could have done it a different way. I could have said if the test score is greater than or equal to 90, then give it an A. Else, if the score is greater than or equal to 80, give them a B. And I could have done it that way as well. Okay, they happen to choose to start from the bottom and go up using the less than comparison operator. So you kind of get the gist there. Now, on page 129, we start getting to a thing called the if-else-if statement. And so let's take a look at that. That's the test results. I'm on page 131. There I have the public class test results. So that's the name of our class. We have a method Java main, or I'm sorry, static void main. I have two variables, test score, which is an integer, and then string. I'm using the J option pane, so dialog box going to come in, and test score is equal to integer part. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm getting an input, which is going to default to a string, and then I'm going to convert that string into an integer and put it into test score. So here I'm saying if the test score is less than or equal to 60. Now, as we saw just in the previous program, I had to use nested ifs inside of the else, inside of the if. Well, this one, instead of doing an else and then an if separate on two separate lines, we can put that on one line. I can say if the test score is less than 60, do that. Else if, so notice how I've shortened that up. So I've basically gone from, if I can remember what the program was, nested. So notice with the nested, see how many lines are basically kind of used for the same exact stuff as we did right here in just these few lines. So it really does save us a lot of time and trouble. They both do the same exact thing. So I can actually put else and then space if, and then say if that's true, then or if that's false, then go ahead and check that statement. If that one's false, check that statement. If that's false, check that statement, and then we have an else. So if that's false, 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 then you must have an A. Okay, and then we go ahead and exit out of there. So else if statements, the else if. And notice I've got an else if and then I've got an else. Notice that the reserved words are in purple. Here I got null. Okay. This thing down here, or this last else statement, on page 132, talks about the trailing else statement. So we've got if, else if, else if, else if, and then we've got just a single else by itself, because what that says is something is going to fall into one of these statements. Either that if statement or that else if, that else if, that else if. If all those are false, then voila, it's going to drop into that last else statement. So it's called a trailing else. If we take a look at that, yeah, so there's my else statement. Now, in this case, we're using the trailing else statement to capture any kind of an error. So we're saying if it's less than 60, less than 70, 80, 90, if it's less than or equal to 100, then we're going to go ahead and say an else that's an invalid score. In this case, somebody could have typed in a letter instead of a number, and then that would basically give us that invalid score. Okay. On page 135 talks about logic operators, and now this is going to get into something really, I won't call it complex, but it gets into a new way of doing things, and we're going to go ahead and pick that up here in a little bit. So we'll see you at the next video lecture.